Remember Richard Gere? Remember movies like Pretty Woman? Richard Gere was a huge star in the 1990s. And then somehow he disappeared. And I remember noticing, like, what happened to Richard Gere? Kind of thought, well, maybe he just, made plenty of money, decided to go do something else. But no, it turns out that Richard Gere was blacklisted by Hollywood and blacklisted over his critique of communist China. There's a new book out called Red Carpet, and it has the gory details. Evidently, the story goes like this. In 1993, when Richard Gere was handing out an Academy Award, this was for Best Art Direction. Gere was simply the presiding guy to hand out the award, but he took time in his opening remarks to decry, quote, the horrendous human rights situation there is in China, not only toward their own people, but toward Tibet as well. So here's Richard Gere, who's some kind of a Buddhist. And so he was speaking out against China, and he also openly allied himself with one of China's state enemies, the Dalai Lama, who is an enemy, who's a political enemy as well as kind of a religious enemy because he's seen as competing for the minds and the affections of the Chinese. And Richard Gere has embraced and met with multiple times the Dalai Lama. Now, in 1997, Richard Gere made a film called A Red Corner. And this is a film about an American executive who's trapped in China and is hauled up under charges and it's a journey through the maze of the communist so-called justice system. And it's very clear this is Kafkaesque. They don't really have any proper charges. You don't really have a legitimate defense or defense attorney. The whole system is a show trial. And the Chinese, of course, were really upset. And turns out about the same time that movie came out, and the movie was not a huge success. In fact, it came out the same year as Men in Black and My Best Friend's Wedding, both of which kind of dominated the charts. But it turned out that right around that time, the Chinese president, this is Jiang Zemin, came to America to visit Bill Clinton, and they were talking about expanding relations and talking about trade deals. And this, at the time, this movie was right out there, was being talked about, and apparently upset the Chinese. And so you might say, so what? So what if you upset the Chinese? So what? You rile up the Communist Party? Big deal. Well, as it turns out, as we came into the 21st century, the Chinese economy became a global force. And Hollywood began to see that its future is in China. So the American movie market, and this is long before COVID, it sort of leveled off. And by contrast, what was happening in China is a lot of Chinese were moving from rural areas where they were peasants, farmers, moving to the cities, buying apartments, becoming part of the global manufacturing economy. And these are people ripe for, buying a pair of jeans and also for going to the movies. And so Hollywood basically made the decision to kind of play the game with China. Now, play the game means the Chinese are very strict. There's certain types of movies, certain types of scenes. You can't do them in China. And Hollywood is like, we're okay with that kind of censorship. Chinese censors scrutinize every scene. So in 2006, Mission Impossible deleted all kinds of scenes the Chinese didn't like. The 2012 James Bond movie Skyfall had a scene in which a Chinese security guard is killed. And apparently the Chinese thought, well, this kind of makes our troops look kind of wimpy. We don't like this. Cut it out. They cut it out. And so basically Hollywood made the decision, this guy, Richard Gere, publicly associated with critique of China, he's a little bit radioactive. So let's try not to sort of put him out front and center because we're trying to push all our movies in China. So this is how Richard Gere got canceled. And of course, Richard Gere, for the most part, said nothing about it. So no one really knew. But this is the reason. This is a guy who basically hasn't made a big movie since 2008. I think was that Unfaithful with Diane Lane? I think that might have been his... Yeah, but I think Unfaithful with Diane Lane was his kind of last big movie. And now the guy is doing apparently independent features with like Nicholas Jarecki and the second best exotic Marigold Hotel, which is, so I think a movie maybe even with an Indian landscape to it. So Richard Gere is on a 21st century blacklist. And again, it's not because he is a communist, as in the McCarthy days, and it's not even because he's a right-winger, because he certainly isn't. It's simply because he doesn't have a good thing to say about China.